All right. Hey, what's up? Hello, this is Auntie Cubana coming back at you with another episode of the Unladylike Lounge podcast. And today I am joined by Edward. Edward, how are you tonight?
I'm so good. How are you?
I am terrific. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you lending us some of your precious time. Why don't you take a moment to brag on yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what we'll be talking about tonight.
Well, I am a recovering actor and entertainer in New York City. I've
Hey.
been doing that since I was like 5. And last year I published a book called Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses that kind of chronicles my kind of off the wall experience as a cancer patient and survivor, and like a lot of the things that they don't tell you, that you don't expect, that just kind of pop out of nowhere, things that you would have never considered. And all of that is kind of framed in musical theater, because what better way to tell an insane, ridiculous story about being in the hospital than through an insane and ridiculous medium like musical theater. And that is being adapted for TV, which I'm really excited about. And we're just doing all the things. This is why
All
we're
the
frazzled and my hair looks terrible. I just got
Oh,
over.
stop it. You look magnificent. Oh my
Well, thank
gosh.
you. It's my ring. The ring light is doing me some favors tonight, I will say.
It is. Let me tell you, I did not look nearly that good when I was trying to do musical theater. It was, I
Oh
don't
my
know if it
God,
was
tell
trying
me all about it. What did you do? I'm going to turn this on you. What did you do in musical theater?
Okay, so I mean, it was mainly like middle school to high school. I got suckered into it when I couldn't turn down a dare. And my high school music teacher was like, I double dare you to go out for the summer musical. And I was like, shit. And so I started with Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, moved
Don't
on
we
to
all?
Annie. I know, don't we all? Did
It's
Annie.
foundational.
It is. Did Oliver, did The Wizard of Oz, did but I always wanted to move on to like I don't know if you know Minnesota or any of the Midwest that well, but we have a dinner theater in Chanhassen, Minnesota, and I always wanted to go there and do stuff like Les Mis, and that kind of stuff was my dream, but never got there. So enough about me, let's talk about you.
Enough
Because
about me. What do you think about me?
I feel like Annie explains it all, because when you tell people you did Pepper, they automatically understand, okay, your hair was a whole hot mess.
Right.
Like, we
They know
understand
who
why you looked
you are.
ridiculous. Yes, for sure. So now you say that you express your, your journey through cancer through musical theater. I feel like people would never put those two together, because when you think musical theater, you think big, elaborate, and just kind of out of this world, almost outrageous. And when you think cancer, you think, oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, but like, how outrageous and out of this world is cancer? I mean, like, just the experience in and of itself. Like, I was doing a musical when this happened. I was doing Hairspray out in the western part of the country, and I came back from when that closed. I came back, and like a week later, I was like hooked up to machines in a hospital. Like, it was so dramatic and such a breakneck switch that like it could only be described as like, and scene, like moving on to the tragedy part.
Stage left.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole thing. I mean, like, so many ridiculous things happened. I like doctors messing up dosages, like not understanding what I was talking, like all kinds of things happen. And that's why I chose musicals to like frame what was going on, because like it is like you're saying, like this big dramatic, like heightened sense of things, of scenes and living. And when you're in the hospital, like, and all this stuff is kind of happening around you, you're just kind of looking at it like, how is this real? How is this my life right now? So that was done very intentionally to kind of like showcase and hit the point home that like it is a really dramatic and crazy, sometimes funny and indecent, experience being in that situation.
So now you said that you literally went from doing Hairspray, which, oh my gosh, like
Such a good
after
show. I
this,
love it.
I
Still, I
know.
love it so much.
I was literally gonna be like, okay, after this, I'm gonna need to know, like, are there videos? I need to see it. I need to know all the things. You went from doing Hairspray to being hooked up to machines. Were you diagnosed while you did the show, or like right after?
I was misdiagnosed before it started, and then while it was continuing, it was an 18-week contract. While it was going, I just had like this tumor that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger under my arm, and so like to the point where we had to take my blazer out because like it was getting so big I didn't have room to move. And so by the time I left that show, I had this like grapefruit under my arm and I couldn't move it. And like my arm was displaced. And so like, when I came back to the city, I was like, again, immediately diagnosed and like right into the hospital. So it was kind of like an
Oh,
ongoing journey.
so okay, and like disclaimer, you don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with. What like so did they know that obviously they misdiagnosed you originally, but like did they know it was a tumor at the time and just thought it was like
No.
benign, or did they think it was like, oh, you have a cyst or something? Like, was
I,
it?
I wish I wish that they thought it was a cyst because that would be at least remotely closer to what they actually told me that they thought it was. And you're not gonna believe this. And again, heightened ridiculous reality moment.
Oh,
I
shit.
had gone in for a CAT scan because they were like, this looks like it could be cancer. And I was like, I don't have time for that. And I went in and just I don't. I went in for this scan and they were like, "Oh, it's actually an infection. It looks like cat scratch fever." And I was like, "You have got to be joking."
Stop it!
I was like, "You're
No.
lying." And they put me on antibiotics for like 3 months and it didn't go away. It kept getting bigger and I was like, "These aren't working. What do I do cuz this is not working?" So
Cat
yeah,
scratch.
very very misdiagnosed.
I am literally, I'm a horrific person because now I have the song stuck in my head and I had no idea that was like a real thing. So now what?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Now I'm really starting to get the sense of, okay, musical theater, this was the way to go with this. I'm really getting the sense. I got it.
for real.
So when, and I don't have time for this. Um, so where was it the same place that diagnosed you with cat scratch fever that diagnosed that brought on the cancer diagnosis, or was this like
No.
when you went home?
Um, no. So I actually just Googled my old doctor to see if he was alive or not. I was kind of hoping he
Oh
wasn't, so I could
no.
say some other things about him. But but so he was this old man in the Upper East Side, and he sent me to this other place that did the CAT scan. And then he, when I came back, was like, "This is enormous. I don't understand. You look great. Why is this happening?" And so then he sent me to like a proper hospital where they did an actual biopsy, which should have been the first thing we did, but
Right.
whatever. Um, lumps, I feel like just automatically like let's biopsy it, and that's not what happened.
Yes.
So anyway, that biopsy kind of is what got me into that hospital, which ended up being the wrong choice, but in the end it worked out because we switched. We went somewhere else.
Okay.
Because the things that they wanted me to do were like, you've got to be kidding me. Like the protocols that they were asking of me felt very much like, "Oh, this is a rare cancer. You're a lab rat. We're going to try a bunch of different experimental things on you and hope that they work." And after a while I was like, I just, this isn't, the math here isn't mathing, the science here isn't sciencing,
I
and
feel like there's
I just,
levels.
right, I gotta go. I gotta go and get a second opinion somewhere else.
Right.
Um, which is what I did. But to be honest with you, like that was kind of the best moment of the whole thing because I very much got like my power and autonomy back that, you
Okay.
completely lose. Like during that point, there's so much happening. You just become kind of like a rag doll getting tossed around. And you do everything you can to try and feel like a normal person while this is going on, even though you couldn't be farther from normal.
Right.
Like I'll never forget the first time, more than this happened more than once, that I got caught jerking off in my hospital room by a nurse
Oh
who
my
came in to help me. And not my finest moment, but like again, I was 25. It was like the first
God.
week that I was in the hospital and I was like, well, I'm all alone here. And
Right.
it was a tragedy, and nothing worked. It wasn't good. And this nurse walked in on me, and I tried to play it cool, and she knew. She called me
Right.
out.
Like, I mean, can you at least pretend like you and I both don't know, what the fuck is happening right
Right,
now?
right. But she told me, like, and this was also kind of a thing that I talk about frequently, because like she told me that it was good to do that because it like cleaned
Really?
out the pipes. She was like, you got to clean out the
Okay.
pipes or you're going to get permanent damage if you don't. Like, you know,
Oh.
okay, fine. Um, and then I had a doctor later on that told me that I shouldn't, because, upon climaxical moments, your blood vessels dilate. And if it happens too fast or too hard, you can have blood vessels burst, you can have a brain bleed, you could have a stroke. And I was like, wow, all of that from jerking off. Like, what a
So,
journey.
right, like I have this cancer going on, or I can jerk off. Like,
It's
tell me
like,
what
and
to
it
do,
was just
Jack.
right, like, but they were trying. Someone told me yes, someone told me no. So it was very like mixed messages. Um,
Right.
I'm gonna go ahead out on a limb and say that they were both right. And I think it's just dependent on where you're at and what you're being treated for at that moment.
Right.
Um, During chemo, like, relatively is easy depending on where you're at in the process, and where I was
Okay.
at that moment, it was fine. And so she was probably
Okay.
like, yeah, do it, fine. Later on, when things were a little worse, she was probably correct in saying, maybe don't do this. And then of course I did it anyway, and I gave myself a hemorrhoid. So, like, it was just a whole,
Oh no.
yeah, but again, this is what I mean, like, all these crazy, heightened, insane things that happen. Like, here we
Okay.
are.
So I have to ask, and feel free to not give it away because I don't want to give away too much. Is this information in the musical?
TBD. It is certainly in the book.
Okay.
Um, but we're likely going, it's probably likely, I don't want to make any promises, but the TV show will likely include
Okay.
at least a moment of that.
At least a moment.
Right.
Okay. All
We're
right.
we're not gonna dedicate a whole episode to it, but like
Oh,
maybe like
man.
maybe a moment.
Maybe a moment. At least some informational, educational moments for those wondering, can I do this while I'm in the hospital
While
for,
I'm
for science purposes?
right, for science, for educational purposes only,
Yes, exactly.
can I do this? Yeah.
Can I jerk off in the hospital? Which both answers have been deemed correct,
Right.
depending on your journey.
If there's so much, well, I think can I jerk off in a hospital is
Well, yes.
there's so many circumstantial things that are dependent on the answer of that. Like, if
Don't
you're a
just walk down the
doctor
hallway.
standing if you're a doctor standing in a patient room, the answer is probably no. You probably should not do
Probably
that.
not.
If you're like
But
working behind reception and like you're talking to someone about their protocol, like, probably no is the answer.
probably not. If you're in your backless gown just walking through the hallway, like,
Like, maybe
just
take it behind closed doors, like, whatever.
behind your own closed door.
Right,
Or
close
that
and
is
lock.
yes, that is a disclaimer from the Unladylike Lounge. We do not condone public masturbation.
At
Just
least in a
saying.
hospital.
Right. We will not be held responsible for anybody's
No,
city
you're in charge of
ordinance.
your own things.
Yes, yes, please. So where else does the book take us on your journey through this scare, through this not scare, but this scary but seemingly comedic journey of yours?
A couple places. I think two places that I felt were the most surprising to me at the time were, one, when I told one whom I thought was one of my best friends that I had cancer. I never heard from them again. And then, like, literally ever again, like, never once ever again,
Oh
to
my
this day. And that was 11, 12 years ago. And the other one was that I was with someone, I was dating someone during this whole journey. And the year mark of our relationship hit, and I discovered, and then subsequently they broke up with me, that they had been seeing someone else the whole time I had cancer. Which for the year of our relationship was really only about 5 months, and not even yeah, 4 or 5 months. And so I'm like getting terrible news from the hospital that nothing's working, and like we don't know what's going to happen. We're having a really hard time with this. It's not looking good right now. And then he's like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, and then when I found out that he was dating someone else, I was like, it kind of sounds like you weren't doing it to begin with.
Right.
So forgive me for not feeling sorry for you.
Right. Forgive me my badness for
I'm
not.
so sorry for inconveniencing you with my
Right.
life-threatening disease.
My bad
How dare I?
for putting my burdens onto you
Right.
during our relationship.
Next time I will take your feelings into consideration. Thank you. So sorry.
Right. Oh my gosh, what a
Truly. But I mean, these are all things that happen in life that like you don't think about when you think, oh, someone's a cancer patient. There's no immediate thought of like, oh, I wonder if like their significant other left them. And statistically speaking, men leave like by a lot percent. And so, and like
really?
women do too, but like on a very, very, it's like 3 or 4%, whereas men are like 90 something percent leave. And it's a lot. Maybe it's not as high as 90, but it's very high. And so like these are all things that I had spoken to friends after I was out of the hospital. I felt really displaced. I felt like I didn't belong. I was uncomfortable in my own body and my own life. And so I started talking to people I knew who weren't like close friends, but I had like in the periphery of my lifetime, and started to ask them questions about how they felt as a person, as a functional being on this earth after they were told they were cancer free. And every single one of them had something to say about something that like threw them off and really fucked them up. And
Mm.
like the big one was kind of like not fitting into your own life, like getting out of the hospital. And I feel like there's this assumption that like, your doctor gives you a call and there's this big dramatic music swell and it's like, you're cancer free. And then it's like, oh my God, I can go back to living my life the way I want to go back to
Right.
living my life. And that's just not how it is, like it just
Mm.
isn't. You get that moment, you get the whole, oh my God, I've made it. Thank God. And you like definitely have a cry and a release, and you tell who you need to tell or tell who you want to tell. And then after that, you're like, shit. I don't know what to do now, because most of the
Right.
time, at least speaking to my own experience, I went from having a career that was on the upswing to absolutely nothing. And it very much felt like starting over to a degree. There was also this moment that like really brought me down to earth, where I had told people that I finally like posted on social media that I had cancer, because I stayed away from doing that while it was happening.
Mhm.
And when it was over, I remember telling someone at an audition at some point that I was like, oh yeah, I just got out of the hospital, I had cancer. And they're like, oh, that's where you went. I didn't even notice you were gone. And I was like,
Oh,
ah,
I would have
cool,
been
cool, cool.
like, I feel like that would have been a Red Foreman moment and broke my foot off in someone's ass. Like, how?
Well,
Like,
the thing is, like, you have to understand, like, when this happened, I only told my closest friends. I told my closest friends and my family, and that is it. So anyone outside of that really didn't know. And I didn't
true.
really post on social media a lot anymore. I like completely backed away from all of it. So effectively, I disappeared. And it was just kind of like this feeling that, like, I'm back now. And you expected some kind of like, oh, I wondered where you were. Are you okay? What happened? And it was like, oh, I didn't even notice you were gone. I was like, oh,
Oh,
great. Yeah, cool. And so it's like moments like that coming out of it as a survivor that you don't really consider for other people or for yourself, that are like these pockets of things that are like, that's nobody warned me about that. There's no
right.
like there's no support group for that. There's no
There's
resources for that.
no. What are some other things that you weren't expecting going into cancer treatments or even coming out of cancer treatments and beating it?
Um, I think I didn't know at the time. I think most of what I would have to answer this question is in way in the rear view hindsight. And I think the hardest pill to swallow on for to this question is that cancer is truthfully the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, it
Really?
sucked in the moment. It was awful to go through. It was really hard. But you know what? It completely recalibrated my life. It completely wiped people out of my life that I did not need. It gave me this book that I wrote over time that has given me a whole different trajectory for my career and my life, a whole different set of legs professionally.
Mhm.
And it's just it's not, I don't want to say it's become my entire identity, because I fought that tooth and nail from the beginning. It's one of the reasons why I didn't want to tell people that I had cancer, because I didn't want to be the kid with cancer.
Right.
But now 10, 11 years out of this, it's very much, I'm so grateful that happened, not only because of what it gave to me, but also what it took away from me. And do I sometimes wish that I could see what my life would have looked like had this not happened? Sure, maybe. But like, I know looking back, the kind of person that I was prior, I just like was kind of a know-it-all, snotty, like I was kind of a cunt. Let's be real. So like, you know,
Self-awareness.
right, self-aware. And now I can, now I'm a cunt, but I'm very selective about who I'm a cunt to.
That part.
Right. Back then it was just blanket whomever. I knew better, and that was the end of it. So like, cancer took that away from me, which is good. It's like having a toy that you shouldn't have, and cancer was like, nope, we're
Right.
not going to let you have that anymore. And so like, really coming into that perspective of like, that was a really dark period of time and it was really hard to get through, but in the end, it's the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And I know that
Wow.
that's super hard to hear for some people and super controversial to listen to for anyone who's experienced cancer, but like, it really is about, like you said, the self-awareness of who you are, who you've become, letting go of who you were. I talk about multiple deaths very often, and like, the person that I was prior is just dead and gone. And I truthfully now, even as a full-fledged adult many years later, don't really see glimmers of that person in myself anymore. And I do have moments sometimes where I'm like, oh, I really miss this part of that person, because I don't feel it anymore. It's gone.
Mhm.
um like the fearlessness and running around
Yeah.
and laughing and not having a care in the world, and maybe some of that is being an adult and having to do adult things. um but like, make it stop.
Right.
But but it really is just kind of like this very intentional selection of who you want to be, and you're in charge of that moving forward, because cancer
Yeah.
really wiped the slate clean.
Right, right. I actually, obviously, I won't condescend to say that I know what you mean as far as how you got to that point, but I definitely understand what you mean as far as you got a clean slate in your evolution through that journey. And it sucks that it took having cancer to get to that point, but it's beautiful that you took something that could have been so dark and so, I mean, it was dark, but something that could have completely destroyed and depleted you and just completely broke you, and you used it as a chance to completely evolve and grow and learn something of yourself in that. That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Where can the audience find this incredible book, and when might we be looking to see it on TV? Because I am chomping at the bits to see
Chomping at
something
the bit.
like.
The TV thing is so hard to say. These things take
Okay,
time.
for
I,
sure.
I would love to be able to say like top of 2025, but like, we don't know. We don't know. We're like still in beginning stages, still trying to figure out the path forward. We have a lot of ammo on our end ready to go, and it's just kind of like seeking the path to get to be ready for it. But in the interim, you can certainly find the book, Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses, is available on barnesandnoble.com. It is on Walmart.com. It is on so many different stores. I think there's like 40 of them. I'm not going to bother to list them. But like,
Damn, all the .coms.
yeah, all the .coms. I mean, Amazon, of course, but they're terrible. So I try to point people to Barnes and Noble because they're a better company that I like.
Yes.
And if you're in New York City, you can stop at the Drama Bookshop on West 39th Street. There are signed copies there in the front of the store on the signed book table. It's a whole thing. If you're in the New York City or tri-state area, feel free to swing on by.
I need to go to New York just to get a signed copy. Yes.
Do it. Do it. The Drama Bookstore is
do.
amazing. They just redid it, courtesy of Lin-Manuel Miranda. We love.
Yeah, shout out. And what kind of advice, tips, guidance would you give for our audiences worldwide who either may be looking to write their own stories or who may be facing or have faced cancer or any other adversities in life?
Well, I think to your first point, anyone who's looking to write a story or write anything, the most solid advice I can give you is just do it. Don't worry about how it looks. Don't worry about how it sounds or formatting or anything. Just write it. Like brain vomit out onto a page, whether that be analog with a pen or on a computer or an iPad, whatever. Just get it out and worry about shape shifting it later.
Okay.
To people who are going through something, I'm a silver linings kind of guy. Like I'm very much a problem solver where it's like recognize the issue, okay, and now what can I do about it? And I know not everyone is like that naturally, but I would like to impress upon someone who's going through something like this to look for moments that are worth living for. I will leave you with this. One of the things that I did intentionally was to create good memories with my friends and my family. And that was for two reasons. One is because had I lived, I wanted to look back and be like, those times were good. Like that was bad, but we had a really fun time at my head shaving party where everyone got stoned out of their minds and shaved my head. Like
Yes.
that was fun. We had a pizza party in my hospital room right before my stem cell transplant. And they brought all this pizza up and we all had like music playing. And it was really, so we did things on purpose to make memories. And I also did that should something have happened and I wouldn't have made it or had been there, that my friends and family could look back and say, hey, that was a terrible time, but wasn't that time in the hospital room really fun? Wasn't that time the nurses came by to dance with us really fun? Like it was, it was very intentional to purposefully find good in what was happening. And I think that's so important for anyone who's going through anything bad. Feel the feelings, allow yourself to be whatever you need to be about your circumstances, but then fight it and try to make good out of it.
Yes, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure to hear and share your story and your humor. Oh my gosh, your sense of humor. I absolutely love it. And to our audience members, you already know I'm going to share all of the links to all the .coms in the description box below or above if you're watching this in our YouTube channel. And to all of our listeners, you already know what it is. I love y'all fiercely.